if you want to really get involved with the power of the understanding that this is, then you have to take it to the next level, not conceptual, like Hal was saying. You know, that the reason that teachers and trainers emphasize the idea that you should not believe anything they say, because it's not going to get you anywhere. If you did believe what they say, it's not going to get you anywhere. That's not the price of admission to the freedom that's available, the price of admission to being enlightened, to being awake and being aware, is that you have to be willing to move beyond concepts. And as the teacher that Hal and I shared used to say, you have to put the jacket on and wear it for a while, see what it's like to wear the jacket for a while. And what that means in regard to this whole business of thy will be done, or destiny, or understanding that everything emanates from the source, it's all the same concept, right? Is that you have to be willing to practice it. This is what the Peace Pilgrim said that really struck me. She said, peace is not new. Everybody here knows about peace, right? Everybody here, especially if you're as old as we are and you lived through the 60s and the early 70s and the Vietnam War, the peace movement was a big deal, right? But what the Peace Pilgrim said is that everybody's aware of the concept of peace, and everybody has their own understanding of peace, right? But almost nobody practices it. And that's why it doesn't make a difference. The same thing is true with these teachings and practices. It's fine, it's that you have a conceptual understanding of it. In fact, that's probably necessary for you to take the next step, right? So you have some general idea where you're going, right? Yeah, but then after that, you have to really deal with the fact that as far as self-realization is concerned, it's a private enterprise, right? As far as self-realization is concerned, you can take what you hear here, you can take what you read, you can practice what you practice, and all that's set up, all that creates more probability for the possibility. All that creates more probability for the possibility. But still it won't get the job done. You can master the concepts and you still won't experience the truth, right? So you have to be willing to take that next step, and especially when it comes to thy will be done, and especially when it comes to the idea of destiny, right? If you find these concepts challenging, then find out. If you find these concepts challenging, if you have yes buts, right? If you have questions about the idea of thy will be done, it's worth your while, it's worth your trouble to really take it to the next step and see if you can allow yourself to try it on. See if you can allow yourself in the course of your everyday life to see if you can train yourself to start to look from the eyes of God, to see if you can start to train yourself to look from the position in which you can see for yourself directly who you are and see for yourself directly what's true. Meaning that if there's no time, if there's no space, if the teachings tell us, right, that free will is an illusion, if the teachings tell us that destiny is the truth, right, that there is no free will, those things aren't emphasized very much by teachers. You notice Al didn't go there, or Hal didn't go there, right? And the reason that he didn't go there, and most people don't go there, is that's too much. That's too far for most people to go, right? That's why in the teachings in the East, that's why what's now available to the public, right? In the East, the teachings that are now available to the public weren't available except for monks who prepared themselves to be able to understand these things for many, many years through the practice of meditation. And the way they looked at it in the East at that time was that there's no point in talking about things that a person's not able to understand and a person is not able to hear, right? So you have to wait until they can understand and they can hear. That was then. This is now. Now the whole enchilada, you know, and I hope that you can appreciate and have gratitude for the fact that all teachings of the truth are available to you. All teachings. The secret teachings are available to you, right? The direct path is a secret teaching. The Dzogchen teaching in Buddhism is a secret teaching, right? Only certain monks were allowed to even become involved. You get involved with these teachings. They had to pass tests to begin. Monks had to pass tests to become a beginner in these high teachings. And now all of it is available to you, right? So there's a good side to that and a bad side, right? The bad side is that if you're not ready for it, if you don't understand it, if you can't hear it, right, then you're going to have to grapple with it, right? You're going to have to deal with whatever you're confused about, and you're going to have to interact with that and interact with teachers about it until you get enough clarity that you can take the conceptual understanding and go to the experience of that conceptual understanding. Meaning that, in terms of thy will be done, that you actually are willing to start to look at what you're seeing with the idea that thy will be done. So you can begin to see that that's the case. This is what Belsakar said. He said, and this is an important thing to understand, he said, if I were to tell you what to practice, which is different, by the way, than what his guru told people to practice, because his guru was like Hao and most other people, they were totally focused on self-realization, right? Now, but Belsakar experienced self-realization, right? And then what he said is, if I were to tell you what to practice, I would tell you to practice paying attention to what you think you do. He said, I would tell you to practice to pay attention to what you think you do and really examine it closely. If you do, you'll see that it's not true. That's what I would tell you to practice, right? Because why? Because what he discovered and what I get from his teaching that makes it different, right, is that he said that the thing that will keep you in the personality, right, the thing that will keep you in the conceptual reality and in the personality, right, is the continual way that you're being in the world as a doer. What will keep you from the realization is the ongoing way that you're being in the world as a doer. You know, one of the ways to look at this, to understand the power of this particular understanding, right, is that your conditioning is fundamentally, primarily and fundamentally to get you to experience yourself as a doer. Your conditioning is intended to get you to identify yourself as a separate self, right? As an agent of action, as a doer, right? You were raised on that stuff, right? So for you to hear that that's not true, it's like that's challenging your entire system. That's challenging your operating system to hear that that's not true, right? And so the reason that even though that's challenged your operating system, that I persist, and even though it's confusing for many people, and even though many people will even butt it to death, right, because they just resist it, right, because if I don't resist it, the system is up in arms against the concept like that, because if I don't resist it, it takes away from me who I thought I was in the most essential way, because who I thought I was more than anything else was somebody who could do something, right? Who you think you are more than anything else is a doer, right? That you can do something, right? And even now, and even here, right, the idea of your being a doer has you be related to these teachings and practices in such a way where it seems as though you can do something, and if you do something, that will cause a result, that will make a difference, right? That's the only way you can process it, right? Because that's the way your system works, right? That's the way your operating system works, right? So the invitation, as Hal said, you know, the invitation, right? Because you don't have to take it. The invitation is to see if and when it comes to this business of thy will be done, right? The invitation is to see if you're willing to try it on. That's all. Nothing's at risk for you to be willing to try it on. In other words, if you could just start to practice looking at what's going on through the lens of thy will be done, to start to see it that way, right? To start to see, that what's happening is not coming from you, that what appears to be coming from you is coming from the only place it can come from with you, which is your past experiences. Where your behavior is coming from is your past experiences, your conditioning, and your DNA. That's the only possibility. Even a scientist would agree to that, right? And the DNA and the conditioning, right, is the limited database, is the limited set from which you can think. It's the limited set from which you can see, like that, right? So to deal with this means that you have to be willing to put that aside. Even when Hal was working with you to see if he could get you to have a recognition of being, to have a recognition of awareness, right? What was he doing? What does Muji do? What do all the teachers do? They tell you to put everything aside. Put your thinking aside. Put your feelings aside. Put your beliefs aside, right? Until you get to a place where there's nothing left for you to put aside, right? And if you can get to the place where there's nothing left for you to put aside, then what's left is you, awareness, right? So that's the process that's used to get to it. But what they say is that awareness is there at all times. And through meditation, it becomes possible for you to become familiar with the experience of it so that you can have access. So you can be aware of being aware consistently, right? And this whole business of thy will be done is something that is the highest of high teachings. It's the highest of high teachings. Because if you learn to see from those eyes, right, then you're seeing through divine eyes. You're seeing things as they truly are, right? Yeah, you're seeing things as they truly are. And because of that, it's easy for you to step aside and give up your false sense of doership. Because of that, it's easy to put aside the idea that you're the doer. Because you're seeing things as they are, right? And you're experiencing things as they are. And by doing that, by trying it out, right? By trying it on, right? You will start to get a glimpse. If you really do it, right? You can't fake this, right? You have to really do it. If you really look and you really put aside the idea that you're the cause of your actions, right? And you really put aside the idea that anything has to change or anything will change, right, when the shift occurs. The shift being the shift from you thinking of yourself as a body and a personality to recognizing yourself as the awareness itself. So by practicing this, if you do it the way it's meant to be done, if you really do look and see it from those eyes, the way you'll know you did is you'll experience a sense of relief. You'll experience a sense like something got let go of, like something lifted, something got lighter, right? As Paul says, you experience the possibility of traveling lighter, that you don't have to keep walking around carrying your life on your shoulders. See, that's the burden that people are experiencing. You're walking around carrying your life on your shoulders. You're walking around carrying the life of all of humanity on your shoulders because consciousness is a collective reality, as Jung said, right? No wonder people are anxious, right? No wonder people are depressed, right? But if you do this the way it's meant to be done, if you just try it on, you don't have to believe it, you don't have to accept it, right? If you experiment with it, if you try it on, and you notice the peace, and you notice the possibility of peace, and you notice the experience of who you are as peace, then you have a place to stand. Then you have a way to be, right? Because you've tried it on, you've had the direct experience of it, right? You've had the direct experience of yourself, you've had direct experience of the way things actually are. Then you have a place to stand. That's why we say that when you wake up, when you realize the truth of yourself, when you realize who you actually are, it's the beginning of a process. It's the beginning of a process in which everything is reorganized Immediately. The realization of who you are immediately reorganizes everything. Do you understand that? If you actually see it, right? If you actually see the truth, it immediately reorganizes everything, right? And then from that point on, everything that seemed to be true, that appeared to be true, right, starts to disintegrate, and what starts to replace it is what's actually reality. What starts to replace it is the experience you have of who you actually are, not who you think you are, not who they said you are, but who you actually are. And once you have that experience, right, it's transformational and it's transcendental. That's why that experience is so critical. That's why it's really what the focus is, right, to have that experience. And if you have not yet had that experience, then I implore you, I invite you to allow yourself to have that experience, because that's all it is an allowance. It's an allowance because it doesn't require that you do anything, because it's already true. As Hal said, and I've said this before, the biggest problem with the direct experience of who you are is how easy it is. It's so easy that you don't know what to do. It's so easy that, and because you've been trained to do, right, because you're a trained doer, right, that when you hear this, you will try and do something to be who you already are. You can't help it. You can't help it. That's one of the reasons that when people begin to practice meditation, right, they do it as the person. The person's trying to become enlightened, right? That's the way meditation occurs when it first begins. The person's trying to be enlightened. And it was very interesting that Hal mentioned this. He said, if that's the way you begin to practice meditation, you haven't started the practice yet. If that's the way you start to practice meditation, you haven't started the practice yet. For people who practice meditation as a doer, right, they can get the benefit of stress reduction, and that makes a difference. There's no point in discounting that. That makes a big difference, right? But you're not yet really in the process of awakening. Because in order to be in the process of awakening, you have to deal with who you think you are. You have to deal with that, with the recognition and understanding, first conceptually that it's not true, and then once you get it conceptually and you get the cost of it conceptually, that should be enough to motivate you to start to look, to actually look. Instead of think about who you are, look at who you are, and the looking at who you are is not looking that way, it's looking that way. So as Rupert said yesterday when I was listening to him, in the beginning, when you lose touch with that, right, you have to keep following it back again to the source, right? In the beginning, right, it's a process in which it seems to come and go, right? Although it's not coming and going, what's coming and going is your attention. Yeah, your attention. When your attention starts to get paid, when your attention starts to get attracted to and involved with thinking, right, then the awareness disappears, seems to disappear, right? But no, it's still here. It's just that your attention is on something else, that's all. So you could say that what we're doing is training ourselves to maintain an attention, to maintain a kind of attention that keeps the idea of awareness alive. You see what I'm saying? To maintain a kind of attention that keeps the idea of awareness alive. Training yourself to stay aware of awareness. This is what they mean when the teachers say, abide in the self. Stay aware of awareness. Abide in the self. Why? Because this is where your power lies. This is where your power lies. If you can be who you are, then who you're being when you're being who you are can be with anything. This is the point of all of this. If you can be who you are, then when you're being who you are, you can be with anything. And when you're being with whatever you're being with, it has no effect on you, including death. This is the whole point of all of this, right? Is to begin to experience that which doesn't move, that which is still, that which is silent, that which is always present that way, and that which is moving, right? That which happening, that which is arising and appearing and disappearing, right? That's the movement, right? What the witness, the awareness of that is still and silent, right? So when you have a direct experience of that, so that you've confirmed, see, when you have a direct experience of that, so you've confirmed it. It's interesting, in Catholicism, one of the processes that they go through in indoctrinating children and adolescents into the teaching is confirmation, right? Did you make your first confirmation? If you're a Catholic, you make your confirmation, right? You're confirmed, right? I went through that as a kid, but I have no idea what the hell they were talking about. But now I can say, when I use the word confirmed in the context of this conversation, it has a value. Maybe that's what they meant, right? But in this conversation, the word confirmed has a value. You have to confirm the truth with yourself in order for it to be real for you. And if you do confirm it, and if it is real for you, right, then it will be the fuel that you can run your process on. It will be the energy of motivation that will be available to you to start to live your life differently, to start to look at life from a different set of eyes. And it means everything. It means everything. But you have to, and I'm not going to go from one person to ask you from person to person, but the first thing that has to be gotten over here, the first hump to get over here, is this whole business of, do you really have the experience of the truth of yourself? So if that's not something that you have yet had a direct experience of, right, then take that on. Take that on. If you want to talk to me about it, I'm happy to talk to you about it individually and assist you and support you, you know. One of the things when Hal was talking to Eleanor, I thought that was a very useful interaction with Eleanor, because in a sense she was kind of saying, you know, like, say something that can give me a place to look, you know, say something that can give me a place to have this experience that you're speaking of, right? Because I'm being bombed with concepts, right? I'm being bombed with concepts, right? And it feels like just more and more information, more and more conceptual information, right? More and more head stuff, right? Yeah. So what he said to her, he was just trying to look for a way to point to it, right? And what he said to her was very interesting, a very simple thing. He said to her, are you able to wake up in the morning, you know, when you want to? You just think of when you want to wake up, and that's when you wake up and you look at the clock and that's the time it is? And she said, yeah. And he said, well, how do you do that? How do you do that? Because if you're asleep, the reason you set the alarm clock is because you're asleep. You can't wake up. You need something to wake you up, right? Well, the reason you can do that, and I do it, and a lot of people do it, right? It's a pretty common phenomenon, right? Is because the awareness that you are doesn't sleep. It's awake all the time. It wakes you up when it's time to wake you up, right? So that's an example of what we're talking about here, right? That subtlety. See, the personality will take responsibility for everything. So the personality will say, oh, I can wake up whenever I choose in the morning, right? So the personality will rob you of the experience of the truth, right? It'll claim it. It claims everything, right? It has claimed everything, right? That's why that's all you consider yourself to be, is what it has claimed that you are, right? So I really invite you and implore you, especially you, right, to look and see. You're in one of two places when it comes to this. You've either had a direct experience of the truth, right? You've witnessed your own awareness, right? You know who you are, right? Or you haven't, right? Nothing bad, right, good, or wrong about any of it, right? But it is a critical step, right? And then after that step, right, you can come at this from another angle, and that's why this "thy will be done" thing is powerful. You know, once you know who you are, you can come at this from another angle and really attack the final holdout of the personality, because the final holdout of the personality is doership, that you can do something. And the personality is threatened by the absence of being a doer, because if it can't do anything, it's lost. It's lost, right? Well, you can create a practice where once a day, this is what Ramesh recommended, right? Where at least once a day, maybe twice a day, you train yourself to pay attention in such a way where you take note of something that seems absolutely unequivocally obvious that you did this, right? That you did this, right? And just make a note of that. And then at night, when you have time, sit down and relax, and then review the thing or the couple of things that you made note of and really look closely to see what the truth is. Was it really your action? Or did that action come from what you were thinking at the time? Right? And it's always going to come from what you're thinking at the time, because no action can occur until you think about it. Otherwise, you don't know what to do, okay? So what you will always find is the same thing, and that is there's no evidence for you being the doer. Yes. Benjamin Leibniz, look him up. It's on Wikipedia, the research that Benjamin Leibniz did and other people have demonstrated that what you think you're doing, right, that your brain has started to do that before you were aware of it. There's research that shows that very clearly, right? So we're not talking about theories, we're talking about science. And that's why what the teachers say and what I say is let the evidence teach you, you know, just like the same thing with the pandemic, right? What does the science say, right? Let the evidence teach us, right? And the thing that the teachers can be confident about when it comes to self-realization is the evidence is the evidence. It will always be the same. It will always be the same. So this whole process that you need to deal with to find out for yourself what's true, find out what the evidence says is true. Don't go by what you believe. Don't go by what you think. Don't go by the past. Don't even go by what the authorities say, because the authorities are wrong. No, find out for yourself. Find out what the evidence says. If I say that what you are is awareness itself, right, and that awareness is always available where you are at all times, then look and see. Is it there? Is it there? Find out for yourself if it's there, right? Really confirm for yourself that it's there. And if it is there, right, then have that be an end to the question, who am I? If it's there, have that be an end to the question, who am I? Now that's over. We don't need to deal with that anymore, right? Now we want to know, if I now know who I really am, how will I be in the world? If I now know who I really am, how will that change my life? How will that change the way I experience my life? And this is where Balsekar comes in. That's the question he answers, because he looked at it for himself. And he said, I never really looked at it because I didn't care. Right? But upon being asked, he looked at it for himself, right? And what he came up with is, he said, the thing that is the thing that is different. Everything is the same but one thing. The thing that is different is that it's clear to me that I can do nothing and no one else can do anything either. And therefore, I can do nothing to you, you can't do anything to me, right? And all of our suffering is related to that kind of thing, what people do to me and what I do to people, right? That's a lot of where the shame and the guilt comes from. That's a lot of where the personal responsibility comes from. That's a lot of where the burden comes from that you carry all day around that causes stress, right? So all you have to do is pursue this and come into the light, and you start to experience peace. That's the outcome. That's what Balsekar said, that he experiences peace. He experiences being home in his body, right? He experiences having no conflict with anyone, right? And he experiences being satisfied, complete, relaxed, right? Enjoying life, right? Because the burden of responsibility, the burden of action has been lifted from his shoulders. So now he says what Ramana Maharshi used to say, right? If you ask him what's going to happen, he says, well, let's wait and see and find out. Right? Because thy will be done. It's just like that physicist. Who was that guy that was the paraplegic? Stephen Hawking. Yeah, they even said to him, you know, oh, you're supposed to be, you know, like an Einstein, you know. Is it true that there is no such thing as free will? And he said, yes, it's true. There's no such thing as free will. Everything is predetermined, but it doesn't matter because we don't know what's going to happen. And with that, I'll send you off for your day.